What up, perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? Repping America, the center, and common sense. Wow, and this week's theme on the letter I, idiots, comes to mind quickly. But, let's try to settle this. Are Democrats really on the side of criminals? Let's get it rolling. So before we delve into the meat of the matter, I got this flyer in the mail. It's related to Proposition 50. It says, attention taxpayers, statewide special elections are expensive. It's your duty to vote. Make your vote count. Don't let the $280 million cost of the special election be wasted, especially when California is facing a $20 billion budget deficit that could lead to big cuts to public service and emergency services. Vote today. Yeah, they don't want that money going to waste. It's going to waste. Whether it passes or it fails, it was wasted to begin with. Fighting Texas? This comes from the Mercury News. This is also on the flyer. Here's how much the special election for California's redistricting measure will cost. The cost of putting California's redistricting ballot measure before voters this fall is expected to run the state $282.6 million, eclipsing the final bill of the last statewide special election. This I have a quote on here from Luis Aleo from Monterey County. Counties don't have a dime to spare as we work to keep local services afloat in the face of federal and state budget crisis. And what is this all about? If you vote yes, the state will use newly legislatively drawn congressional district maps starting in 2026. The maps will be used until the Citizens Redistricting Committee, which we voted to have, draws new maps following the 2030 U.S. Census. So that means for the next 4 years, no matter what happens, presidential elections, congressional elections, anything having to do with D.C., we're going to be using these maps that are dividing up California in a way that makes no sense. One of the biggest glaring obvious place where you see that is what they did to the rural areas. The farmers of California, which is a huge billions and billions of dollars come out of California in agriculture. But now they're going to be represented by people from the city who don't understand their needs. And that's the worst part. They're chopping up California to make it more blue, but yet for the last several decades, all we've seen is the blue-minded people drive the state into the ground. In my job as a fire alarm technician, I see what has happened. I see some of the companies that we represent, they rent out warehouses, they create stages to record shows. Most of their warehouses right now are filled with people's overflow from other warehouses. I was just out one, and instead of the 2 giant stages that they had built there, it's being used by a plastic company to store their extra plastic that they've manufactured. It's being used as a clearance outlet, and the front offices are being used by an insurance broker. Not to make Hollywood films. The blue-minded people of California have driven out the film industry. They've driven out the oil industry. They've driven out manufacturing. We are propped up almost solely by government contracts for aerospace and big tech. And what happens when Google and some of these other ones get tired? Apple, what if they get tired of these shenanigans? What's going to happen to the state when it leaves? And that comes straight from Democrat policies that are very, very anti-business. And they're anti-police. As I said at the beginning, they support criminals. Pure and simple. So, Joe Biden, he led all those illegals across the border. He didn't really do much. He tried to placate the far left. What's Trump doing? Well, Trump's sending in special task force into places. Let's look at Memphis. A lot of people said, hey, instead of going to Chicago or the blue cities, why don't you go to a red state? Well, he went to Memphis. They located dozens of missing kids and 109 gangbangers. They made more than 1,000 arrests. And what's the official number right here? Let's look at the official number. 1,309 total arrests since September, so about a month. 9 arrests for homicide, 52 arrests for sex offense, 527 for warrants, and 132 for firearms. They also located 70 missing children and 100 gang members belonging to like Tres d'Angua or MS-13. Trump went in and helped clean up the city. But local lawmakers such as Democrat Representative Stephen Cohen railed against the operations. Memphisans are not enemies. They are Americans. Oh, they are entitled to constitutional rights, not their government working to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill them. We are not a training ground or target practice. They went after criminals. But you're backing the criminals. That's what you're doing. When you fight against law enforcement, no matter how you frame it, you are fighting for criminals. Pure and simple. But again, Trump taking action, working on cities. We're going to get into some more of where he's been working on cities in just a minute. Yeah, so, under Brandon, a.k.a. Joe Biden, millions of unvetted immigrants came across the border, and lots of them were criminals. Lots of them were being sought out by their homeland's police forces, so they fled here to start operations. Here's one in the Big Apple, New York City. Dramatic ICE raid nabs a crew of dangerous illegal migrants, including Senegalese outlaws with lengthy rap sheets for drug trafficking, robbery, domestic violence, and assaults on cops. Huh. Yeah, you know where they went? They went down to a certain place in Chinatown, Canal Street, and they rounded up these migrants who were selling counterfeit goods. And as the report says here, NYPD quality of life cops have repeatedly raided the vendors, only to have them flee and return later. Despite the brazen peddlers who are being cuffed, being in the country illegally and boasting disturbing rap sheets, the federal raid, of course, sparked heated protest. Yeah, paid protesters, paid by left-wing actors, to try to disrupt police activity. These people are out there warning people that the police are coming. Look, these are counterfeit goods. Pure and simple. They're committing crimes. They're not supposed to be here. And a majority of them were let in here during the Biden administration. And they're setting up shop on sidewalks, which creates a whole host of problems for people. Counterfeit products. One of the things that I hate the most about counterfeit products is there are people who are going to get robbed for a Michael Kors or a couch or whatever the latest brand is. They're going to get robbed because they've got a fancy purse, but they're not rich. So whatever you take from them is really going to hurt. When you take a rich person's phone, it's easy for them to buy a new phone. It just is. I'm not condoning that, robbing rich people. That's not what I'm saying. My point is that for some people, they have to scratch and save. Scratch and save. Yeah, I guess that's the word. To buy a cell phone. What money they have in their wallet is important. Their credit cards are sometimes their lifeblood. And counterfeit products, make you a target for no good reason. Whatever. Probably a dumb point, but I made it anyhow. So, ICE is moving into Chicago, Illinois. And the border czar, Tom Homan, blasted Illinois Governor Pritzker's claims that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is targeting non-criminals during raids as the agency's Operation Midway Blitz began in the state. Homan told Fox News, if Governor Pritzker wants less of what he calls collateral arrest, then let us in the damn jails. We can arrest the criminal in the safety and security of a jail rather than release a public safety threat back into the public, which is just dumb. Homan went on to disagree that illegal immigrants have not committed a crime because entering the United States illegally under certain situations can be a federal misdemeanor or a civil violation. They cheated the system, said Homan. There are millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing their background investigations, paying their fees to be a part of the greatest nation on earth. And the background investigations is the most important thing. We cannot allow other countries' criminals to use the United States as a place to escape. It's ridiculous. Illinois and Chicago, they really are they're trying to outdo California. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, another Brandon. You notice these idiots all have the same name, I guess. Joe Biden shout out there. Has taken a similar stance, noting that he strongly opposes ICE operations in the city. He criticizes ICE on X for what he calls due process issues and history of wrongful detentions. Okay, if you turned over the criminals to ICE for deportation, maybe they wouldn't be there. Immigration planned, calculated, vetted, sure. But what Biden did was a crime against the United States. It was treasonous, and it was backed by his party Democrats, and they're doubling down on it right now. I've said this ad nauseum, I know. But if an illegal migrant commits a crime, no matter how small it is, they're already demonstrating that they're not going to be on their best behavior. So why should we continue to trust them? Why should we continue to allow them in here? These politicians, these sanctuary states, cities, whatever, are committing a crime against the United States. They are. I have a heart, okay? I really do. I understand that people come here for a better life that they can't achieve in their own country. All I'm asking in return is be on your best behavior. Don't get DUIs. Don't beat your wife. Don't sell counterfeit goods. Don't commit crimes. Don't sexually assault children. I don't care what is okay in your country. It's not okay here. That's all I'm asking. That's all I am asking. Is that if you do sneak into our country, can you please be on your best behavior? Is that too much? No? Okay. I guess I'm asking too much for people just to, kind of hide out here. I mean, think about it. If you snuck into a concert, you would just be happy to be in the concert. You would stay in the back. You would, try to find seats that aren't occupied. But what a lot of these people are doing is they're trying to get the front row. You see the analogy there, folks? All I'm asking for is if you come here, please try to blend in. Be on your best behavior. Don't break laws, especially DUI. I mean, that's just an insane one. That is crazy. That is crazy. Yes, there are worse things that they're doing than DUIs. But to me, DUIs are one crime that is completely avoidable. All right? No heat of the moment crap with that. So, as the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago are protecting these unvetted migrants, one of them, Brandon Johnson, has a 2026 budget proposal. And what he wants to do is a per-user tax on social media companies and a per-employee fee on businesses. Well, he's going to eliminate the grocery tax and he's not going to raise property taxes. But he wants to put a hike on the 11% higher personal property lease tax on tech companies known as the cloud tax. He wants to charge any company with more than 100 employees $21 per employee. He also wants to charge 50 cents per user under the social media amusement tax. He's going to start taxing online sports wagering. And he's going to triple the yacht tax from 7% to 21% for people who moor their boats at Chicago's harbor. Oh, let's tax the rich. Then the rich leave, and then what the fuck happens? And then for people who rent cars in Chicago, he's going to raise it from 50 cents to $2.75. Wow. And how's he going to save money? He's going to put hiring freezes. He's going to reduce contracts with vendors. He's going to merge city offices and sell vacant space. To who? Who the fuck wants any space downtown? And he's going to reduce the overtime costs for the Chicago Police Department. Really? Instead of confronting ballooning pension costs, runaway personnel spending, or bloated bureaucracy, he manages to avoid any meaningful reform. He's not going to look into the pension obligations, which, I mean, you want to put it into perspective. Chicago's pension obligations is more than 44 states. Why? Because he gets money from the union, and the union negotiates the pensions. See how that works? Instead of trying to do anything to reduce that, he just wants to tax people. The article spelled it out. Taxes that may be framed as targeting the ultra-rich could push more businesses to leave the city or avoid investing here altogether, worsening the city's long-term revenue outlooks. And one of the things that he's doing is he's saving $1 billion by simply putting off things like hiring. He's just putting it off to another day. So we're good now, but we're going to be understaffed. He has a new program that's costing $100 million, the Community Safety Fund, and plans for expanded mental health services. That sounds really good, but they don't have any accountability, and they're funded with unstable, politically targeted revenues. In other words, revenues that might disappear if somebody with any sort of common sense takes over as the mayor. We saw the same thing here in California. Billions of dollars being wasted on homeless programs, being fraud, nepotism, all of that kind of crap. Right? Yeah, well, we're not done with the idiots in Illinois. We'll be right back with more of that. So, Illinois State Secretary of State Alex Gianniliotis, whatever, has launched a hotline called Plate Watch. And he's urging the public to report any instances of ICE or Customs and Border Protection tampering with their plates. And why? Because an immigration officer was seen on a video telling a protester take all the photos they wanted of a specific truck's license plates because they swapped them out every day. He wants to go after federal law enforcement for using dummy plates on their vehicles. Really? That's where you're putting your effort. You're not putting your effort into turning over criminals for deportation. No. You're going to go after the ICE vehicles. You are placating the far left. You are placating the screaming memes who have no sense inside of their heads. And I say that very confidently because these people that are out there protesting ICE, first of all, a lot of the protesters are paid. We do know that. A lot of them are just out there for an excuse to throw rocks at cops. And you're facilitating this. You're giving them more ammunition. You're prompting them to get more involved with trying to disrupt ICE operations. Because why? You want to keep the illegal migrants in your city and in your state so you could count them on the census and gain power through that. Because that's how it works. The more people you have, the more votes you get. It's sort of simple like that. You know, illegal aliens are not voting in these elections, but when the Democrats get the power, they get more power because they represent more people. So, we need more representatives, or we need more electoral college votes. So you keep your population numbers up so that when you seize power, you get more power. It's the way it works. It's documented. I'm not making that shit up. Unfortunately, the Democrats are running such a dumbass show right now that you don't have to make shit up. They are targeting the license plate. Meanwhile, by the way, in Illinois, law enforcement doesn't have to have plates. They don't. They're exempt from that. The federal government is exempt from whatever the state says anyhow, which is really drives me up the wall about sanctuary states. Now, I'll take a quick moment here. I believe that the states have the right to say whether or not marijuana is legal. Why? Because I don't think it crosses the threshold of a public health hazard of any sort. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Obviously, as an older person, it doesn't affect my development in any way. I really urge kids not to smoke weed. Maybe when you get a little bit older, when you turn 21, fine, whatever. It's so funny right now. I've got my 21-year-old son-in-law who lives with us. He just went to his first weed shop. But he's hiding it from my wife. But my wife is trying to hide the fact that she smokes from him. It's a fucking hilarious game that we play here. But back to the point. The state should have that right to legalize or keep illegal weed. I don't think the federal government should be involved with weed. Weed is a natural growing substance, and time has proven that it's really not the worst thing for you out there. But sanctuary states, that is protecting criminals, flat out just protecting criminals. All right? The weed that I buy here in California is legally grown and legally sold to a person of legal age. When you bust some guy for burglary, find out that he's an illegal alien, and release him on cashless bail, and he just disappears, the state, the city, the county has committed a crime. And I think it's time that Trump starts enforcing that. All right? We have a problem. Look, you go 5 years ago, before Joe Biden seized power, okay, I would have been on the side of the people who say, hey, we don't need ICE coming into our city. But so many people came in. So many. Look at the numbers. The numbers range from 10 to 14 million people came into this country unvetted under questionable asylum claims or flat out illegally. That something now has to be done. You know, I don't know what to say. So, Hollywood. Javier Bardem says the Israeli film boycott does not discriminate against individuals and instead holds companies and institutions all over the world accountable. And he says he wants to be clear. We do not discriminate against any. They are holding companies and institutions, not individuals, accountable for their complicity and participation in the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza and the illegal settlement of the West Bank. Right. Okay. The reason why they're trying to clarify this is because in the UK, you're not allowed to discriminate based on country of origin, nationality, ethnicity, or religion. But they want to protest this because Gaza is such a wonderful place and Israel's such a nasty country. Okay, well, if Hamas was not running Gaza and then trying to import weapons to use against Israel, Israel wouldn't have to blockade the harbors and the borders. They wouldn't have to do that. But Hamas is up to no good. Hamas launches suicide bombers into events. And hey, Javier, just so you know, Israel owns the West Bank. What people like to forget, because it doesn't fit their narrative, is that Israel turned over this land for the Palestinian people, the so-called Palestinian people, who left Jordan, who were not welcome in Egypt. They were not welcomed by any nation in that region other than Israel. And to say thank you, they launch rockets, missiles, and suicide bombers into Israel. So shut the fuck up with this. Is Israel 100% perfect? No. Has Israel maybe done some suspect stuff? Sure. Have Israeli citizens gone too far sometimes? Sure. But they are not organizing suicide bombers to go into Gaza and blow up markets and theaters and events and attacking and kidnapping and raping people at a music festival. That was Hamas. Though Hamas is not some nationality that came into Gaza. They are made up of Palestinians. They are brainwashed at an early age. There is a reason why no Middle Eastern country is taking refugees from Gaza. That's the only evidence that I need and that anybody should need. But no, these actors, I had, you know what? Look it up. But I know Elliot Page was one of the people on there that I was really disappointed with. You know, I've supported Elliot Page through her transition. Loved him on Umbrella Academy. But shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. And right now, Israel is, this is bizarre to me. UK lawyers for Israel sent a letter of warning to Netflix, Disney, Amazon Studios, Apple, and Warner Brothers and Discovery, stating that the boycott violates the UK's Equality Act and may impact financing and insurance. That's the lengths that these people are willing to go to, that you have to have lawyers get involved from a country. Israel has to send lawyers to say, whoa, this is just flat out discrimination, because it is. They can frame it however they want. Simply saying we're not discriminating against a single Jew. We're discriminating against a group of Jews. Oh, okay. Or Jewish sympathizers. Whoa. Wow. Wow. Way to let your anti-Semitism fly free there, Bardem. Meanwhile, in their precious city of Gaza, Hamas is executing all opposition. They're rebuilding their power. And for the most part, Gazans are supporting it. They're not rallying behind the other factions. They're not rallying behind the powerful families that are trying to drive Hamas out. Yeah, that's what you have in Gaza. You have families who have said, enough is enough. We need a change. We need people who are sympathetic to allowing Israel to be a country. The only way that they are ever going to end that war over there, that conflict, the endless cycle of death, is if the people of Gaza say, Hamas, get the fuck out. Hamas, get the fuck out. Right? I think that was Sophie Powers. What was that? Hamas, shut the fuck up. Yeah, there you go. There you go. A little Sophie Powers for you. I rail against it so much because this is one of those cases where it's not very gray. It's very much black and white. Okay? Israel allows the people of Palestine to live in Gaza. The people in Gaza attack Israel. What is Israel supposed to do? What are we supposed to do here in the United States? Are we supposed to allow a bunch of liberal lunatics to drag our country down so far that our enemies finally see our weakness? You don't think that could happen? It can happen. It can happen. People want our land. People want what we have. We are uniquely situated to have everything that modern society needs. We can create anything that modern society needs. We have the resources. We have the land. I'm just saying, when people are out there supporting Hamas, even if it's just slightly, like Javier Bardem or Greta Thunberg, I know they're enemies of the United States because the United States stands for truth, justice, and the American way. And unfortunately, Gaza, I don't think, does. So Winsome Sears is running for governor in Virginia. She was the first black female to be elected to a position of power. She was the attorney general, I believe, and she was at a James Madison football game. And one of the fans started screaming at her, "Go back to Haiti." To which she pretty much replied, I'm Jamaican and I was born here in the United States. I love that. But she was quoted in this article as saying, I thought Democrats were supposed to love everyone. And just to be clear, I'm Jamaican. They turn on you. If you are black and you represent the Republican Party, they turn on you so fast. They're not about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They are only about diversity, equity, and inclusion when you vote the right way. And that, to me, is what makes them just so evil. I understand there are a lot of right-leaning Republican racists out there. I get that. But Republicans don't profess diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when you say that you are for that DEI bullshit, but then you turn on the people if they're not voting your way, how does that make sense to anybody? But then again, this is the same party that claims that they support law enforcement, but they want to defund it. They say that they support law enforcement, but they attack federal task force that go in to clean up the streets or immigration roundups. They attack those people and they celebrate the people who attack and they encourage it. The whole state of Illinois is encouraging people to report ICE vehicles without the proper license plates so that then the state via the police can write a ticket? They plead down so many criminal cases just to keep their conviction rates up. They think that crime is systemic and that it's society that created crime. You can make that argument in a few cases, sure. That's fine. There are people out there who are desperate and do desperate things. But guess what? Those are the people who are simply shoplifting or, stealing some fruit, stealing some stuff from a grocery store. But these people are backing people who are convicted of spousal abuse, DUIs, child endangerment, child sex crimes. They charge them, they release them, they disappear, they never see jail, and they're not deported. Democrats support criminals by being lax on criminals, by contextualizing everything, by looking for ways to let them go, by looking for ways of making paying for crimes easier. And we all know that before this thing with Winsome Sears, another lady was holding up a sign that was suggesting that she uses a segregated water fountain. The Democrats honestly believe that racism is okay if it's aimed at somebody who's not a Democrat. How is that standing by your values? Your values should celebrate diversity, inclusion, equity in the Republican Party. Wow, a black lady runs as a Republican and wins, and now she's running as governor. But no, nastiness. It's the same thing that they show with the violence towards the police, the violence that they show towards anybody who's out there with an opposing view. I mean, in case you forgot, Charlie Kirk was assassinated simply because a bunch of assholes don't agree with him. There's a lot of people out there I don't agree with. Some of my friends hold political views that I'm not on board with. I don't hate them. I don't not talk to them. I listen to what they have to say. Sometimes I put my hands up and I just say, I'm not going to touch that. Because I'm trying to be purple. And I hope you're trying to be purple. The only way that we can get this country back on solid ground again is for Republicans, conservatives, centralists such as myself, purple people, reaching our hand out and going, hey, come on board. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're Hispanic. I don't care if your parents came here illegally. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're trans. Let's look for these common values and let's look for the betterment of the United States, okay? And if Trump's not delivering that, then let's talk about it. I'll talk about it. But the Democrats just won't shut the F up. They won't allow me to address some of the issues that I want to address because we have all of this crap. We have a state, Illinois, rushing to be more liberal than California, putting out a hotline to report ICE agents. Is that what you really want your money used for? California just spent $280 million to make California more blue. Do we really need that? But we have to be able to see past that, to see the people that support that and find that common ground. And maybe once we find that common ground, maybe then we can start to impress upon them how they're wrong about these other issues. Because I know from my own history, I allowed the people from the blue to show me where I was wrong. That's why I'm purple today. That's why I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party through and through. And so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And if you're lucky enough to have tickets, 21 Pilots, crank it up and dance it out.